Yoga is a group of physical, mental, and spiritual practices or disciplines which originated in ancient India. Yoga is one of the 6 Astika schools of Hindu philosophical traditions. There is a broad variety of yoga schools, practices, and goals in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. The term yoga in the Western world often denotes a modern form of hatha yoga and yoga as exercise, consisting largely of the postures or asanas. The practice of yoga has been thought to date back to pre-Vedic Indian traditions, possibly in the Indus Valley Civilization around 3000 BCE. Yoga is mentioned in the Rigveda, and also referenced in the Upanishads. Although, yoga most likely developed as a systematic study around the 5th and 6th centuries BCE, in ancient India's ascetic and sramana movements. The chronology of earliest texts describing yoga practices is unclear, varyingly credited to the Upanishads. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali date from the 2nd century BCE, and gained prominence in the West in the 20th century after being first introduced by Swami Vivekananda. Hatha yoga texts began to emerge sometime between the 9th and 11th century with origins in Tantra. Yoga gurus from India later introduced yoga to the West, following the success of Swami Vivekananda in the late 19th and early 20th century with his adaptation of yoga tradition, excluding asanas. Outside India, it has developed into a posture-based physical fitness, stress relief and relaxation technique. Yoga in Indian traditions, however, is more than physical exercise, it has a meditative and spiritual core. One of the 6 major orthodox schools of Hinduism is also called yoga, which has its own epistemology, ontology and metaphysics, and is closely related to Hindu Samkhya philosophy. The ultimate goal of yoga is moksha, liberation, although the exact form this takes depends on the philosophical or theological system with which it is conjugated. In the classical Astanga yoga system, the ultimate goal of yoga practice is to achieve the state of samadhi and abide in that state as pure awareness. According to Jacobson, yoga has 5 principal traditional meanings. A disciplined method for attaining a goal. Techniques of controlling the body and the mind. A name of a school or system of philosophy. With prefixes such as hatha, mantra, and laya, traditions specializing in particular techniques of yoga. The goal of yoga practice. From the 5th century CE onward, the core principles of yoga were more or less in place, and variations of these principles developed in various forms over time. A meditative means of discovering dysfunctional perception and cognition, as well as overcoming it to release any suffering, find inner peace and salvation. Illustration of this principle is found in Hindu texts such as the Bhagavad Gita and Yoga Sutras, in a number of Buddhist Mahayana works, as well as Jain texts. The raising and expansion of consciousness from oneself to being coextensive with everyone and everything. These are discussed in sources such as in Hinduism Vedic literature and its epic Mahabharata, Jainism Prasamrata Prakarana, and Buddhist Nikaya texts. A path to omniscience and enlightened consciousness enabling one to comprehend the impermanent, elusive, delusive, and permanent, true, transcendent reality. Examples of this are found in Hinduism Nyaya and Vaisesika school texts as well as Buddhism Madhyamaka texts, but in different ways. A technique for entering into other bodies, generating multiple bodies, and the attainment of other supernatural accomplishments. These are, states White, described in Tantric literature of Hinduism and Buddhism, as well as the Buddhist Samannaphalasutta. James Mallinson, however, disagrees and suggests that such fringe practices are far removed from the mainstream yoga's goal as meditation-driven means to liberation in Indian religions.